Welcome, everyone, to this virtual town hall. I'm Carol Hauk, President of the Board of Education for the Greater Egg Harbor Regional High School District. Our goal with this event is to inform the public about the bond referendum on October 6th and to give people a chance to ask questions. We chose a virtual event because that gives people the option of participating from the convenience of their homes for all or some of the event, or just to watch the recording later if you have a schedule conflict. The school board and administration have been working for this referendum for about 2 years. In June, the board committed to holding this vote. It's also known as a referendum. And we've really increased our public outreach since then. We have a very informative website, and we mailed a postcard to every home. We've had some news coverage, and we've shared information on social media. Representatives have been out and about at public events. It's important for us to answer any questions the public has because this is an important vote for the communities of Greater Egg. Our superintendent, Mr. Reyna, has presented information at public meetings in each community, and he can tell you more about why the district is holding a bond referendum. Mr. Reyna?
Thank you, Mrs. Hauk. We've put a lot of work into the plan for this bond referendum, and it's exciting to be on the brink of some really significant improvements for our 3 schools. A bond referendum asks voters for permission to borrow funds. We would do that by selling bonds to get funding right away and then buy them back with interest over time. Our financial advisor will explain more about that process later, but a key point is that a bond referendum is used specifically for improvements that are large and long-lasting. This is not a means to fund salaries, supplies, or other costs that are in our day-to-day operating budget. The proposal on the October 6th ballot includes investments in all 3 of our schools. The projects have a total estimated cost of approximately $21 million. That brings me to a second key point, which is that Greater Egg is in a position to borrow that money with no increase to our current tax rate. We are paying off the costs of a previous referendum, so this is an ideal time to reinvest with no change to that tax rate that currently goes towards school debt payments. An example that I would give everybody for this would be, you know your family needs a new vehicle. You've got a short term, a limited number of months left on your car payments for your current vehicle. You hold off on buying that new vehicle until you pay off the car you're currently have financed, and then as soon as that's done, you have that space in your budget to go out and purchase another new vehicle for the family. As a district, we're trying to follow the same model. Instead of increasing the burden, we're trying to maintain a steady level so nobody feels any additional interest.
Thank you. I hope everyone stays with us to hear about the improvements we hope to make, and also hear the more detailed explanation of bond funding from the financial advisor. As I said at the start, we designed this town hall for the public's convenience. You can log on or off at any point, depending on what topics are of most interest to you. And we're recording the whole session, so it can be watched anytime. That link will be posted on the referendum website and shared on social media. The website is vote.gehrhsd.net, and it is full of information. We're also sharing details through our social media accounts and the new app that's just for Greater Egg School District. If you have a question for one of our panelists, please send it to that vote@gehrhsd.net. We'll try to organize questions to line up with the time that topic is being covered by our panelists. We'll also have some time at the end of the town hall for additional questions, and we hope to wrap up by 8 o'clock. We've already heard from Superintendent Reyna, and we have several other people joining us tonight. I want to thank them for their time as well as their expertise and insight. We're going to start with the architects who regularly advise the district on the conditions of our buildings, the mechanical systems, and other facility needs. They have a unique and in-depth understanding of our schools. Mr. Ted Hopkins and Mr. Jason Dubowich are from FVHD Architects and Planners. They're going to give us an overview of the proposal. Mr. Hopkins, I can't hear you right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hauk. Sorry about that.
Grace.
Yeah, we're here to help identify all the components of the referendum at each of the selected buildings. Every building in the district will be having some work done, and we're here to kind of identify that and go piece by piece and give you a really kind of a detailed. We won't get too much into detail, but we'll identify each one. And as you can see, they're going to be repetitive over each building for some part, and there are some uniqueness at each school that had some items that had to be done that were obviously okay at the other buildings. So I want to do that. Is somebody going to bring up the drawing that we can start with Oakcrest and bring that into the screen so I can walk everybody through that? There we go. Thank you. So the drawing in front of you shows the site and the building outlined in front of us, and we'll go through each one. I'm going to go numerically, not to jump around and miss one. So I want to make sure that we tackle everything. And again, some of these Jason and I are going to be going over, and they're going to be duplicated at other buildings, and that's great. And some of them again are unique. So we'll start with number one at the very top, and it's in the red color. And it basically has existing stadium upgrades. Right now, this is a grass field just beyond the baseball field. And in this case, it's going to be turned into a synthetic turf field that will be used for multiple sports. And that is the biggest piece of obviously number one. There's going to be a parking lot just to the left of that. As you can see, that is for handicap access. Obviously, that stadium is very far from the existing parking lot. So just to the left of that playing field, there'll be area that will have a dedicated parking lot. It won't be for everybody. I will allow the administration to determine who would be there, but essentially it is designed to be a barrier-free, handicapped parking area. The red lines that are kind of connected to it are meant to imply a better walking surface. Right now, they're gravel and dirt paths that lead from the main parking lot to that area. Those will be paved, and it'll make it much easier to walk from other parts of the building or the main parking lot to the stadium. And I think that's going to make the route access a little easier for everybody. Right now, there are lights on the field for play. These are going to be upgraded to be LED light fixtures on the existing poles. And what that means is the light levels will increase probably almost twofold. 50-foot candles is what's required for multiple sport play, and it'll be well lit for all sports that want to be played on that field, and be safe at the same time, especially for smaller balls like lacrosse or field hockey if they want to be played on that field. So that's very important, and wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. The existing fields that are in the area are also being upgraded. I'll get to those in a little bit. But let's go to number two. And number two is upgrade of some playing fields called tennis courts, which is lower right. There's 6 courts there. There is a cracking in the asphalt, which is typical, but we want to replace those. So we basically take the asphalt all the way down to the stone and put a new level of asphalt on top of it. And that should last, with proper maintenance, should last 15 to 20 years of play. There'll be all new lines, and it'll be a brand new playing surface. The second thing was the running track. The running track has, and again, deteriorated over the years. It's very common, and it's outlived its useful life. So we're planning on stripping the old track surface off, and we'll be placing down a new synthetic track surface. We'll make sure that the slopes are correct for drainage of water, and it'll be a brand new track on the existing surface. Just adjacent to the track is a little yellow area, and again, that is for accessible ADA parking so that people can drive down that road and get closer to the playing fields, which include the soccer field, that's number 3, and the other fields, which is 4. Number 3 is again an overall soccer field that we're upgrading for natural grass. So that will be replaced with a natural grass field to upgrade that field and providing a new scoreboard in that location. Number 4, which is baseball fields and softball fields, they will also have new irrigation and a new pump that will provide irrigation to those fields. Number 5 is a unique one to Oak Crest. There's some drainage areas that are in need of some upgrading. There's a swale that happens just off the parking lot and goes between the soccer field that I mentioned and the softball field. It erodes in that area, and we're going to improve that area to add some piping so that the erosion is taken away. It erodes over top of the. There's a stone and dirt road in that area, so we'll maintain that a little bit better, and it'll be easier to drive on and easier to take care of in the long run. Number 6 at the very bottom of the list there includes a few things inside the building. The first one is a new wood shop dust collector. The system is old and antiquated. There are new codes for wood shop dust collection systems, so that will be replaced in the same location and upgraded. The auditorium will get a couple of upgrades, one being the soundboard in that will be replaced, and also the LED, the lighting, the house lighting will be replaced with LED lighting, and that's going to be a big upgrade, and it's a much longer lasting and more efficient lighting for that space. And the last one down at the very bottom is the gymnasium bleachers will be replaced and will also accommodate ADA accessibility. But all those bleachers in that room, in that one gym, will be replaced. That's the main gym. That's the main basketball gym. So right now they're wood. They'll be replaced with a plastic seat, a plastic molded seat that is much more common for today's bleachers.
Ted, before you go on, may I add a couple things?
Absolutely, sir.
Especially with you just mentioned with the bleachers. You have to remember these bleachers are original to Oak Crest High School, so they're approximately 60 years old. And not only are we worried about handicap accessible, but we're also worried about our custodians with injuries from pulling them in and out. Motors don't work as well as they used to. So this project is definitely needed, and a safety issue as well.
That's a good point, Tom. The new ones will be accessible. You'll be able to pull them out a little bit at a time via a motor, and again, provide accessibility for wheelchairs within the confines of the bleachers, which is the code that we have to abide by, and they work terrific. They really do work great. So this is what we did at Oak Crest. I'll turn it over to Jason to have him do Absegami, and if you can bring that panel up. There we are.
Okay.
Jason.
Thanks, Ted.
Yep.
So for the work at Absegami High School, you'll find that I'm going to repeat a lot of what Ted said. I'll be brief, but it is a lot of the same type of work at Absegami High School, starting with number 1, which is the red color in the lower left. Again, current grass field for the main stadium football field to be replaced with a new synthetic turf field, and the underground drainage system that goes along with that field. Also here, the track which goes around the football field will be removed and replaced with a new track with improvements to drainage and any repairs to the asphalt subsurface for the track. This stadium would also get the new LED stadium lighting for enhancements for the various sports played in the stadium, as Ted mentioned, as well as increased focusing of the lighting on the stadium to prevent excess light from spilling, to adjacent locations around the stadium. There will also be some enhancements around the field house at the stadium, some additional paving areas for easier access to those buildings during different events at the field. Moving on to number 2, similar to Oakcrest, resurfacing of the existing tennis courts. There are 6 tennis courts, again, suffering from similar issues of cracking and deterioration. They will get a new asphalt subsurface and new tennis court playing surface. Number 3, they're shown as purple lines that lead between the building and the tennis courts. Those are new paths similar to Oakcrest that would allow easier access from the school building to the tennis courts. Right now, it's just grass, and there's mostly just walking through grass or dirt paths. So that would be an improvement in the access to those areas. Number 4 is upgraded natural grass soccer field at the school, and similar, number 5, both fields, or all 3 fields, I should say, 4 and the number 5 would get expanded irrigation system and new scoreboards. And number 6 is the main front parking lot. This is the main lot that you enter the site at, where the buses would queue. This entire lot, including part of the driveway into the building site, would get full repaving and new line striping. And then number 7 takes us into the building itself. Several upgrades similar to Oakcrest here, but a few others that are different. The auditorium house lighting would be replaced with LED lighting. Also a new auditorium soundboard. Additionally, main gym bleachers would be replaced, citing similar concerns that Tom mentioned at Oakcrest. So these would be brand new handicapped accessible bleachers with the molded seats. Also, the wood shop dust collection system would be replaced in its entirety. New ductwork, new dust collector outside the building. Also, number 7 includes replacement of a large window system in the library of the school. This is an original window system to the building. It's in need of replacement due to deterioration. It would also increase the energy efficiency of the building because it is a large piece of glass, and the new system would be better insulated for the building. And the exterior doors of the building would be replaced for similar insulating reasons, but more importantly to enhance the security of the perimeter of the building with new hardware, especially security hardware. And lastly, number 8, which doesn't have a color, it's a little bit hard to see, but it's down near number 2. That is the existing modular classroom trailer at Absegami High School. It's deteriorating as well, and it's becoming an ongoing maintenance concern for the school district. And that trailer would be removed entirely from the site, and in its location, a new outdoor basketball court and outdoor seating plaza would be constructed. The plaza would be situated right outside the cafeteria and act as an extension of the cafeteria for student seating.
And as many people know, with the trailers, they've been eyesore in our parking lot for many years. They're upwards of 30 years old, and we have not used them in 7 to 8 years. So this is definitely the capability of getting rid of that trailer and making it aesthetically pleasing and having a new athletic entrance is very hopeful.
Hey, Tom, the only thing I'd like to add to what Jason was saying, and I agree with what you said, the parking lot number 6 does go, the replacement will go all the way out to Wrangleboro Road. So I know it's not shown graphically that way, but it does extend all the way to the right, all the way out to the Wrangleboro Road.
And it will include the walkways for the students as well, correct?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Okay, I think we can slide over to Cedar Creek. There's fewer there, but similar, and I'll let Jason take you through this as well.
Okay. Again, very similar. Number 1 in the red, new synthetic turf, multi-purpose football field at the existing stadium with a complete replacement of the running track down to its subsurface with new drainage and associated systems for that work. One upgrade to Cedar Creek that would allow it to have similarities to the other 2 schools is the construction of a concession and toilet facility at the stadium. That little rectangle on an angle in the lower left of the stadium. Currently, the school does not have a facility like that. Additionally, this school would also get new stadium lighting poles and LED sports lighting. Again, similar type of enhancement for lighting and similar type of focusing of lighting to keep the stadium bright, but the surrounding areas not have any spillage of light. Also, number 2 in the yellow, replacement of the deteriorating tennis court surface. Again, 6 tennis courts and a new asphalt subsurface and tennis court playing surface. Number 3 is again a natural grass soccer field upgrade with a new scoreboard. And number 4 takes us inside the building to the auditorium, where again this auditorium would receive upgraded LED house lighting, a new auditorium soundboard system, and then number 4 actually also includes replacement of exterior doors around most of the perimeter of the school for primarily enhancements in building security.
I just want to note, Jason, and correct me if I'm wrong, the doors at Cedar Creek are more of a hardware and replacing of hinges than the actual doors. We found that the doors are in pretty good shape themselves, but in the 10 to 12 years Cedar Creek's been open, we've had problems with hardware and the hinges themselves.
That's correct, Tom.
So that pretty much takes us through all 3 of the buildings and the components. So Carol, we'll turn it back over to you. And if there's any other questions, we certainly would love to answer them and ready to do so.
Okay, well, we do have some questions about the projects. The first
Okay.
question is, why do we need turf fields? Isn't grass good enough?
Okay, listen, there's a couple different answers to that. And I'll start with one. And I know that everybody has their own response to that. I think that it's one of those things where they are completely different in the way that a turf field can be played on over and over and over and over again with very little maintenance. There is a machine that resets all the rubber. It also eliminates one of the reasons we're doing this is because the fields don't drain very well. And that is typical of a grass field that is used over and over and over again. And there are ruts, there are areas of grass that get lost, it becomes mud, and it happens very quickly. A turf field allows a lot more flexibility from an athletic director's perspective, and also just from a PE perspective. It can be used almost immediately after somebody else gets off of there. So it's continual play, and it really, one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that we're not putting 12 turf fields down. We're putting 1 at each school. And what that does is it allows relief of the other fields so they don't get played on as much, and this field can be played on continually. I think that's one of the biggest benefits that people don't really realize is the flexibility, and the grass field needs relief. It needs time to regenerate and to recoup and to resettle. So I think that brings a lot of benefits, not just to the field, but to the other fields as well.
This is Hal,
Thank
if I may add to that.
Sure.
For us, it's also exciting to be able to invite the local junior programs to our fields more often. We want to have them here as much as possible. I know Absegami and Oakcrest feel the same way, but it's tough when the grass is getting torn up and then it's affecting our student athletes. We look at this project as a community project, and we've talked to each one of the programs in different sports in each of the towns, and we want them here on the weekends. We want them here at night. I know for all three schools, the ability of the marching band to get on there under the lights later at night is another benefit without worrying about, again, tearing up the field. So I think it's, everybody looks at this as a football field. It's a multi-purpose field. It's for performing arts, every sport, the community, and I think everybody wins because we're able to do that.
Scott, that's a really good point, and I think it should be noted that just about every school district that we do this for, and we ask them later, and I'm sure others can probably offer similar anecdotal stories, that once you have it, you can't really realize what you did without it, and it just becomes such a major part of how you plan PE and again community events. It is an investment, and I think it's been wonderful for every district that we've ever done it for.
Thanks. Got another
Okay.
question.
Sure.
How old are the bleachers that are going to be replaced? I believe you might have mentioned it, but could you go over that again?
Yes, as I mentioned, Oakcrest bleachers are original, upwards of 60 years old. Absegami is also original to Absegami, and they're 40 years old. And if anybody has ever been in Absegami's gym, as you know, it's one of the largest gyms in South Jersey. Those bleachers are monstrous. And when we try to take them out and then push them back in without the use of motors, it's very taxing on our buildings and ground staff. So the replacement of the bleachers in both schools are not only for aesthetics and for handicap accessible, but they're also for safety reasons also.
I think what should be noted, Carol, if I may, and Tom is exactly correct, but what should be noted even more so, and again, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds, but I think it's appropriate, is that those do not have aisles or rails or safety guards on the sides of the bleachers. The new bleachers will accommodate all the safety features that all the other ones have, similar to what you have at Cedar Creek. So these two will be brought up to the same level of safety. There'll be walking aisles that you can walk up to. They're not just random seats everywhere. And I think that's a major upgrade to these bleachers. And, notwithstanding the maintenance issues that come with a 60 or 40-year-old bleacher.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you, Ted and Jason, for the overview of how our facilities can be used and improved for more effective expanded use by the students. It might be easy to think the proposal is all about the high school athletic program, but of course the community uses these resources too. So Mr. Reyna, could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually want to start by going back inside to the performing arts centers for a minute. I don't want it to be under-recognized the extent to which those new soundboards are going to enhance our performing arts programs. The new soundboards are going to provide in one building for us to actually offer 3 times as many wireless microphones now to our drama programs. We also have had issues over the years as the FCC adds more cell phones and adds more walkie-talkies and there's other forms of communication added, some of these wireless microphone systems actually become outdated and you can no longer get parts or service them. So these new soundboards will help our choir, help our band, really help our drama programs. And again, we also have our performing arts centers available to the community. Oakcrest just last night actually hosted a congressional debate. So when we talk about enhancements in the auditoriums, those lighting and sound boards certainly benefit our performing arts programs. But again, our facilities are available to the public. And that gets to the question you just asked, and Mr. Parker touched on this perfectly. You know, a stadium right now is limited in the number of times it can be used a week. What we are looking at with the turf is the opportunity where you can use it 12 hours a day. And when I say 12 hours a day to the average person, that may sound crazy, but if phys ed classes are out there at 8:30 at night, and phys ed classes are on it from 8:30 until 2:30, and then our athletic programs go on it at 3 o'clock, and then the community athletic programs go on it at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, those fields can literally now be used in that stadium 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And just to reiterate what was mentioned earlier, those fields are going to be striped for field hockey, for soccer, which is boys and girls, for lacrosse, which is boys and girls, and football. So one of the things we've already talked about is, you know, to use Oakrest as the example, having William Davies, which is right next door, literally 250 feet across a field, those kids can walk over, their field hockey teams and their soccer teams can use our stadium. And it's a great community atmosphere. A parent can now go to one location, the older sibling plays at 4 o'clock, the younger sibling plays at 5:30, or the other way around. And it'll also really build some community spirit, and that's available there in all three buildings. So it's the middle schools, it's the community, it's the youth soccer clubs, it's the youth lacrosse clubs that we want to be able to bring into our stadiums more. And as I said, the enhanced lighting and sound for the PAC, again, in all three buildings, will not only help a whole other segment of our kids. We have hundreds of kids in each building involved in the performing arts. And we have a lot that go on and study it in college as well. So this updated technology in there will give them a little boost. And again, our PACs are available to the community when they need them.
Thank you. All right, I want to take a moment to remind people how to submit a question for this virtual town hall. If you have a question, please send it to vote@gehrhsd.net. If we can't respond to every question this evening, we will use email to respond over the next few days. And as a reminder, we may hold a question and use that when the topic will be covered by the panelists. We've also set aside some time for general questions at the end of this event. Next on our schedule is some discussion about how these improvements would have an impact on our buildings. And by that, I mean the actual structures. The architects from FVHD will contribute to that discussion, along with Mr. Tom Grassi. Mr. Grassi is the district's business administrator, but he's also very familiar with our facilities.
Well, I want to start with the athletic turf fields. Currently, we have to deal with striping the grass fields for football, mowing. Those things don't seem like a lot, but they add up over time. I know we have a very difficult time with lining the fields, keeping them lined, and try not to damage the fields at the same time. Having the new turf field will give us capability to have the lines painted in for all the sports that Mr. Reyna mentioned, and give us the capability of keeping those lines throughout the whole season. Other advantages we have are the LED lights we're going to have in the football fields. Not only is this a monetary savings for the district, but it's more dealing with the brightness, dealing with the safety for the students. I think Ted had mentioned that the new lights will be a lot brighter, able to see a smaller ball better for sports like lacrosse and field hockey. The other things that were mentioned earlier are the exterior doors. At Apsagami is for replacement of the actual doors themselves. We have many doors that we are worried about at Apsagami that stick, that we have to pull hard to get them closed. So this will give us the capability of getting these doors replaced. We already have a security system that is attached to all the doors, so that system will continue to be in place. And at Cedar Creek, as I mentioned before, the doors seem to be in good shape, but we'll be working on the hinges, have had some problems, and the hardware. Any other things you'd like to mention, Ted?
Well, I think there a lot of the focus is on the turf field, which I think it will be a major piece. But I think that deteriorated tennis courts and track and bringing those up to a standard that all of your student athletes can benefit from is should not be understated. I think those are very important. I think bringing irrigation to fields that allow them to be a little more lush, a little more full, if you will, with the irrigation, and I think that they will last a little bit longer. Bringing those irrigation heads and lines into the fields will make them last a little bit longer that they probably weren't before. So I think those are big components from the athletic standpoint that are huge. I think that there'll be an enhancement that'll be noticed right away when they get in place, and will last for a long time. That to me are the biggest things that are on here that impact every school building. Windows here and there and doors here and there are important for security and for HVAC systems to maintain, and I think those are also good as well. Accessibility to everything. You don't have any. I mean, one of the things that is unique about Oakcrest is the distance from the parking lot to the football field, and it's a long walk. I've done it many times, and so again, so the people that have come to visit, having a parking spot for somebody in a wheelchair would be a dramatic change for visitors and those that come to your sites. The other ones are fairly close. I mean, obviously, we designed all the facilities that are there, but Absegami and Cedar Creek are very close. Oakcrest, it's going to be a dramatic difference, bringing people closer to the fields that may have a difficulty, parents and grandparents visiting. I think that'll be a wonderful upgrade.
Mrs. Howe, could I add one piece of information?
Absolutely.
And I only add this because this question came up over the past month as I've been going to committee meetings or Board of Education meetings. And I believe it was Mr. Hopkins mentioned the machine to groom the turf field. So I just want to make it clear for the community, that's not an expensive proposition. We will utilize the existing light tractors that we already have at each building. And what you do is you actually buy a machine that you pull behind a lightweight tractor. And it doesn't look very different than an old lawn thatching machine. And it really doesn't operate very differently either. But I mentioned that specifically because there was some concern from a couple of people that was an expensive piece of machinery. And actually it's less than a pallet of paint for striping the fields. So I just want to make that clear that, that is something that is also part of this financial equation that makes sense for us.
Mrs. Houck, if I could add, we're talking about the tennis courts and the track, and yes, these are benefits for our student athletes and our students in phys ed class. But if you come to any of the schools after hours, if you come on the weekends, there are people walking the tracks in the community. There are people playing tennis. When you talk about our Performing Arts Center, the middle schools, we're able to get them in there. I just worked, and I know all 3 schools do this. Mullica Township Middle School is going to be hosting their concerts at Cedar Creek this year. And they're the type of things that we want to continue to do. And so the benefits of this referendum, yes, they're for the students who are here now, of course, but they're for the community. And they're for the younger students, of course, and we want to keep inviting them and see everybody in the community use these facilities.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, that was good information about the hardcore aspects of facilities management. I got involved with school board because of the students who come to those buildings every day. I'm looking forward to our next segment, which will cover some of the ways these improvements would impact students and their experiences during the important years that they attend our high schools. So next we're going to hear from Mr. Scott Parker, the principal of Cedar Creek, and Mr. Steve Fortis, the athletic director at Absegami. And they can speak about experiences at all 3 Greater Egg buildings.
I'll start it, and we've talked about some of these things already, but to reiterate, the overall experience for the students in the building, when you talk about from the second they walk in the building, during the day, whether we're hosting a student event in the PAC, the dust collection systems in the wood shops, and the experience that those students, we have a carpentry program, and their ability to be in there and be healthy and be safe and to do their projects. The turf field's the easy one, phys ed, those classes during the day, and of course the student athletes. And it's the overall experience, I think, is going to be improved in many ways. We have great programs, we have great facilities here, but we've fallen behind a little bit, if we're being honest. And the number of schools that have the turf and have these upgrades in our area is increasing, and we want to compete with those schools. And I think this gives us the ability to do that and give the kids a full experience. I know when we have the referendum boards out, if they're out in the school, if we're getting ready for something, the kids are all over the board and they're really excited to see, and they're asking questions. So that just their questions and their excitement tells me how much of an impact it'll have on them if we're able to get the votes needed.
Yeah, and I would just, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
So I
Yes.
would just add that, along with what Mr. Parker said, the students know what other schools have, and they go to other schools, they see what they have, and then they come back to our school and why don't we have better gym bleachers? Why don't we have this? And when you think about it, we don't have slate chalkboards in our schools anymore. That's something that's been phased out. And Mr. Parker's right. We're a little bit behind, and we need to catch up and keep up with the schools in the area. And there are 12 area schools that have turf fields. There are 12 area schools that have composite bleachers. So a lot of this it may seem like a luxury, it may seem like an aesthetic thing, but it is important to the students, and it does have an impact on how they perform and how they do their schoolwork when they believe that we care about what the facility looks like.
Thank you. Okay, I think I have a couple questions for this group. How many students are involved in sports?
I mean, I can speak about the whole district, but Cedar Creek more specifically. It's funny, I'm going to talk sports and activities. So I can tell you sports and activities, about 70 to 75% of our student body is involved in after school activities. Okay, whether that means they're on the field, they're in the PAC, and that number, across the district is similar, I believe. So it's a large number, a large percentage of our students. Many students play in multiple seasons. So to get that exact number, I don't have that exact number for you. But I can also tell you that our percentage of students involved is higher than most districts. When I talk with other principals and they tell me, it's really exciting, they got to, 45 or 50%. And I kind of smirk and say, we're at almost 70% in our district. So we're very proud and we push very hard. Anybody who's had a freshman come into our district in any of the three schools knows that we make it a priority to get students involved. So I don't know if that answers exactly, and Mr. Reyna or Mr. Fortis might have more specifics, but I can tell you that there is a huge impact and a huge desire to get as many students involved as possible.
Yeah, your numbers are pretty accurate, Mr. Parker.
Okay. I have another question. How often is the auditorium used beyond a few special shows?
Almost daily in all the schools for different events, whether it's a phys ed presentation, we do a lot of, whether it's driver's ed or guest speakers come in, the middle school's using it. Anytime we have large group instruction, I know at Cedar Creek and I believe the other two schools, they'll use the PAC for the ability to have a sound system. We also hold many parent nights, orientations, guidance presentations, financial aid nights. So it is used a lot more than one would believe in a given day or a given week.
Thanks. I'm going to interject here. I was just thinking about all the different times that I visit the different schools and go to not just sporting events, but inside dance, the dance classes at the different schools perform there, the band, the concert band, the plays, whether it's drama or a musical. I've seen all those things and seen a lot of people from the public that get a chance to come to the schools and enjoy it. Plus, people get to come see their kids perform. Students get to see each other perform and be introduced into a lot of different things they might never have seen. So I know the auditorium is used a lot for some things that maybe people out in the public don't realize it ever gets used for.
Mrs. Hauk, I would just add to all of the programs you just listed, also have relationships with the middle schools. You know, I know once every couple of years, all the drama instructors will purposely pick a show that has a lot of either small kids in it or somewhere where they can utilize students from the elementary schools or the middle schools. The bands often invite, you know, their peers from the middle schools up early on while they're still in 7th and 8th grade to start performing with them. So, you know, those Christmas shows or that spring drama presentation will oftentimes, it's not just students from one school, it is students from across the age group at a couple of different schools.
Absolutely. Okay, I think it's a good time again to show people how to submit questions. If you have a question, please send it to vote@gehrhsd.net and we'll try to answer it tonight or we'll answer you by email. I'll also remind everyone that we're recording this virtual town hall and the recording will be available on our website. So we've heard about the potential student impact inside our schools, but I know a lot of activities take place outside. Our schools are very busy places. Is there anything else, Scott or Steve, you would want to add?
Mr. Fortis, I'll let you.
I'll just say this, like, I can count on one hand the number of times there's not students in this building in a calendar year, like Christmas Day or Easter Sunday. But other than that, there are kids involved in stuff in this building on campus almost every day of the week, 6 to 7 days a week. So it's constantly being used, and that wear and tear has an effect on what's going on. So it's a lot to maintain, and we've been very diligent with trying to keep up with it. But some of these things are big ticket items, like that trailer at Absegami is such an eyesore and such a point of contention with a lot of people that's a big ticket item to get away with in the regular budget. So these big improvements are needed, and the only way to do that is through a vote.
And again, you know, we've talked about this a couple times, but I'm going to reiterate, this is for our students, this is for the middle school students and for the community. And like Mr. Fortis said, you know, you come out here on a Saturday, the fields are full. You know, you come out on a Sunday, there's people walking the track or playing tennis. So this is it's a school, yes, but it's also a community center. And our students, you know, at Cedar Creek specifically, the addition of lights would be a huge asset for us. You know, we host a playoff football game, and we didn't have a concession stand like like most schools have. The ability, you know, we have porta potties out there. Yeah, it's great, they're clean, but it doesn't, you know, that's not what we want to present to the public. So there's just so many little things, and I think a lot of thought has gone into what's really important with this referendum. And I'm very confident that if we're able to be successful, that our students and our communities will be very happy.
Mrs. Hauk, if I could just add to that outdoor scheduling, and I kind of keep also coming back to the performing arts, but I don't want to forget to mention the utilization or the creation of a turf field in the stadium will allow the band programs to actually now practice in the same type of facility they compete in. You know, Oakcrest and Absegami over the years have had state and regional winning marching band programs, and the ability to practice in a stadium is limited because if you've ever been to a marching band competition and watched them practice, they spend over and over and over in a very small confined space, and they're pretty tough on grass. They're actually tougher on grass than most of the sports, But with turf now, we would be able to have them in the stadium a couple nights a week. We'd be able to have them in the stadium on a Saturday morning before they go to a competition. They'll be able to practice directly in that environment they're going to be competing in. And they'll also have a better opportunity to host competitions, which brings other bands into our community, lets people from other towns and other schools see what we have to offer. But it also gives our band, I think of our band parents and our band booster clubs who put so much time into those programs. They can really help, help what they're providing for our students by the ability to host programs, which we'll be able to do with turf in those stadiums and lights at Cedar Creek. So I think that's a big plus for a large part of our community also.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on, I think there's some more questions. My first question, maybe you could take this, Mr. Reyna. Where will the football team practice when other teams are using the turf field?
Sure, and Mr. Fortis and Mr. Parker could certainly add to this because they manage it daily, but the football teams don't practice in their stadiums right now because, again, the stadium grass cannot take the abuse of football 6 days a week. The football teams will typically only go in the stadium 1 day a week other than the game day. And even then, it's not usually for a lot of heavy movement or heavy contact. So the football fields have practice, the football teams at all three schools have practice facilities. Mr. Fortis can certainly speak to, they're going to be able now to schedule Monday through Saturday who's playing home, who's practicing. But Mr. Fortis, I think the plan is for the stadium really just to become a game-only venue. Is that pretty much accurate?
Yes, and the other thing too is if you look at a school like Egg Harbor Township, which has a turf field, their practice field now can be maintained easier because you can devote more resources to it, and you can have the team. You can spell a field, you can rest a field. Your practice field now, it doesn't go down to gravel. Like right now, our practice field is dirt and mud because they've been on it since August. But when you have a turf field, you can get on that turf field on an occasional day and give the other field a rest. So, and that goes for field hockey, it goes for soccer. It allows you to rotate your teams around and give all that real grass a chance to get some deeper roots and rest. And you could take an entire lacrosse team in the spring, put them on that turf field, and leave a field dormant for an entire season so it can grow and rehabilitate itself. So I think that's what Ted was talking about a little earlier. It does give you the opportunity to rehabilitate your natural grass fields.
Great, thank you. I have another question. Will the public be able to use the turf fields? I think you mentioned a little bit about this, but maybe you could explain a little more, Mr. Reyna.
Certainly, we've already begun conversations with our middle school programs, with our youth athletic programs. We have kind of this idyllic vision of getting back to high schools as the center of communities, and I think over time, that's drifted for a lot of different reasons. But we are, as I mentioned earlier, the specific example with Davies of their lacrosse and their soccer programs being able to come over. We've already reached out to football programs in all of the different communities, the youth football programs, and let them know, we would want to host now them on Saturdays. And again, there's, soccer is big in this area in a couple of our communities. And their community fields are being used 6 days a week. And by the time you get to a game, if it rained 2 of those days previously, they're either not playing their game or they're playing their game in less than ideal conditions. So again, if we could help them out with hosting games for those youth programs, we're extending the benefit, also to the community fields in the sense that they can get a little bit of a rest now. Again, especially on a rainy day, what a football or a boys lacrosse or a soccer game can do to a wet field. It can take them a season to recover. If the youth soccer programs now on a rainy day or the day after a rainy day now maybe don't have to cancel a day's worth of games, but they can work something out with Mr. Parker for Mullica Rec Soccer to come over to Cedar Creek, then that just helps also not only those players, but it actually helps the community with the upkeep of their own field.
Thank you. Okay. The last question I have for this segment is, when would all of this work be done? Maybe Mr. Hopkins, you could take that one?
I'll do my best. Basically, I think one of the benefits of having a earlier referendum date is to get plans prepared for the summer. Most of the work, not all, but most of the work will be taking place during the summer months. We've had some discussions with administration and with principals and so forth about all the work happening over 2 summers. So it'll be the summer of 23 and summer of 24. We haven't finalized anything yet, but I think that, you know, we're going to have to make some decisions to plan, because we don't think that we have the ability to get all the work done over 1 summer. So I think we're going to have to allocate summer of 2023 to some of the issues, and summer of 2024. Some of them will be longer anyway. The building that will have to take place for the concession building, as an example, is not a building that will, you know, mostly take place, you know, in 1 summer anyway. So that will drift a little bit, probably into the fall. You know, the plans will have to be prepared. So only some of the work can get done. Please also understand that there's a procurement issue that has been going on nationwide, and not everything will be able to be installed in the summer of 2023. And that's why some of the issues will have to be taken care of in the summer of 2024. I think that there is a desire to get as much done as we can, Carol, but I think that not everything will be able to get done. And again, waiting for materials and so forth will allow some of this work to happen in the first summer and some of it in the second summer. I hope that was clear.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Our last segment before we open this up for the general questions, we're going to focus on funding. For that, we're going to bring back our business administrator, Mr. Tom Grassi. We're also grateful to have Ms. Sherry Tracy of Phoenix Advisors and Mr. Chris Langhart of the law firm McManaman, Scotland and Bowman. Ms. Tracy, if you could take the lead on explaining how Greater Egg could make $21 million of improvements with no increase to the current tax rate.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think Mr. Raina did a great job earlier of sort of giving the analogy of buying a new car, buying a new vehicle for the home, where you're paying off one vehicle and you may wait to buy the next vehicle and begin to finance that as you're paying off, as you finish your payments on the current vehicle. So that's pretty much what's happening here. The school district has always worked to carefully plan debt service and projects, referendum projects, so that as one project is being paid off, one referendum bond issue is being paid off, another is coming on so as not to overburden taxpayers. In this case, it's a 2012 refunding, or 2012 bond referendum that was done, that's being paid off this current year. This will be the last year. So because that debt is going to be expiring and being paid off, new issue, the 21 million can be added without an increase to taxes for debt service. So it's essentially taking the place of it in the overall debt picture.
Great.
And coupled with that too, as we've spoken about, the district is receiving a large share of state aid. So the state has pledged 42% of costs of the project. That's principal and interest on the bond. So it's not just the principal total cost of the bond. When the bonds are sold in the market, you pay back just like on any kind of loan, principal and interest. So the debt service that the state has pledged at 42% is on both principal and interest payments. So essentially, about 42% of the total costs of borrowing the 21 million.
I think it's also important to mention that the state is funding a lot of projects in this referendum that they had not funded in the past. Our state aid percentage is 55%, so that means we get 55% state aid on all eligible projects. In the past, paving, track resurfacing, tennis court resurfacing, and even some of the work done on the turf fields was not covered by the state of New Jersey. Those items are being covered now. So where when we first put this project together, we were looking at getting approximately $2 million in state aid. With the help of our architect, Mr. Hopkins, we were able to work that number up, and where we're getting 42%. So obviously not everything in this project is eligible. A good amount is eligible, and it gives us the capability of getting 42% of this project covered by state aid.
Thank you.
One other thing that is also kind of makes this the perfect storm in a good way. Not only do we have debt coming off, not only do we have the favorable state aid, we also have what is called capital reserve that we were able to put towards this project of 1.2 million, 1,250,000 exactly, in fact. And capital reserve is something that happens at the end of the school year. If there are funds that were not expended, we're able to put that money aside in a reserve account. If you remember, we've been going through COVID over the last couple of years. So we had a lot of items that we budgeted for that we weren't able to spend money on because we didn't have people in the building. That gave us the capability to put some money aside. So over the last couple of years, we put some money aside and we're able to come up with $1,250,000 in capital reserve that we put towards this project to take off the top.
Okay. I have some questions about the projects. This one I'll direct to Mr. Langhart, the bond counsel. Can you please confirm that the funding will only be used to upgrade the schools and not for anyone's personal salary? Can't hear you. If you're having trouble with your sound, maybe Sherry could take this.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh,
Thanks,
okay.
Chris.
Yeah, it just said unmuted. Going back to your question, can it be used for salaries? No. When we go and issue bonds, the voters, we have to tell the voters how much we're going to borrow and what kind of projects we're going to use it on. And those are all the items we talked about here. I think Mr. Hopkins initially said when we go to bond, we use it for long-lasting capital projects. That's the type of thing we're talking about here. Bond proceeds are almost never used for salaries, and they're certainly not going to be used here.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Maybe Mr. Reyna and Mr. Grassi, you could go for this one. It says, where does the state aid come from?
So this portion of state aid is separate than what Mr. Grassi referenced earlier, which is the state aid that's available, through standard annual school budgets. This state aid is the percentage, the dollar amount was achieved by the state of New Jersey actually receiving the plans for this project and coming back and determining what they would fund for. So this state aid is actually our tax dollars that we've already paid to the state of New Jersey that the state is now giving out for referendum projects. And that's an important part because I want everybody to understand there's two parts to that statement. Number one, these are our dollars coming back into our community. We've already paid this $8.9 million or our portion of that $8.9 million into the state. The second part of that is if we don't do this project, we do not get any of this $8.9 million. The way state aid is set up with regards to referendums, that you have to pass the referendum. You have to, commit to and complete these projects in order to get the state aid. If we don't do this, this money, our tax dollars that we've already paid in, are going to go to other communities that pass referendums. Mr. Grassi, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, it's the debt service state aid for these projects is run through the state of New Jersey. It's a separate pot than, like Mr. Reyna mentioned, than our regular budget. But it's money that the School Development Authority has with the state of New Jersey to fund these projects. And as Mr. Reyna mentioned, the money is not available unless the referendum passes. We can't just say, let's skip and only spend a certain amount of money and just use state aid. We have to use the appropriate percentage that the state has entitled us, and the referendum must go forward.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me adding as well, as Mr. Grassi said, it is debt service aid. So it's only available when you issue debt. So even if the district were somehow able to do all of these projects based on capital reserve, and you heard there's a little over $1 million that will be used from capital reserve that has been built up for the last several years. Just applying capital reserve for these projects, we would not be able to get debt service aid on projects using just using capital reserve for them. Debt service aid is only available when you issue debt.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more question in this section. If the referendum doesn't pass, how much will our taxes go down?
I can take that question. So as we were talking about this new referendum, the new debt service would come on and essentially replace debt that is expiring, that's being paid off from a 2012 referendum. And actually, the taxes are projected to go down a few dollars even with the new debt because of the debt being paid off. However, if the project did not pass, varying because each community is slightly different, anywhere $15 to $20 would be the actual reduction you would see, as opposed to if it does pass, you're probably seeing about a $5 reduction in overall taxes. So it seems like, you know, a pretty small amount, you know, $15 difference, say $10 to $15 difference, in being able to get $20 million of projects done, all these great projects we went through tonight.
So just to clarify, Sherry, that's $20, $15 or $20 per year, not per month or anything, correct?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And I should have qualified that too, on the average home in each of the communities. Yes, thank you. I should have qualified that. But
I've heard this question too, so I just want to make sure the people that asked it, you know, can understand the answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's $20, $15 to $20 or $15 to $21, depending on the community, based on the average assessed value in each of the 4 communities.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
One other thing I want to add, Mrs. Hauk, is over the past 2 budget cycles, as you know, we have the capability of increasing our tax levy in the general fund by 2% each year. The last 2 years, we were able to keep the budget increase to 1% because we knew that we had this referendum coming up over the next couple of years, and we want to try to minimize impact of taxes on the taxpayers of the district in those 2 budgets.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, now that we've heard about the advantage of state aid and the 0 tax increase, we'll go for a few more questions. Okay, here's the first one. Why is this a separate referendum and not part of the general election in November? This person noted a dollar amount that I won't repeat here because we can't verify it, but and I don't want to give out any erroneous information to anybody, but Mr. Reyna, I know you have answered this at other times, so if you could take this question, please.
Sure. First, we should start with the recognition that the state of New Jersey identifies a limited number of times a year where districts can go out for referendum. So if there are 125 districts that are going to go out for referendum in any given year, they're limited to, I believe it's 5 times a year that they can actually do that. So the deeper you get into the year, you lose some competitive advantage. So we chose to go on the first available date. This date was originally scheduled to be in September. The state of New Jersey moved it to October 6th. And I know we want to make sure everybody knows it's October 6th, but by being on the first date, we make sure that all of these companies are in a position where they probably don't have work projects lined up already for next year or next spring or next fall, because again, this is the beginning of this year's referendum cycle. Mr. Hopkins also mentioned the idea that the deeper you get into the year, you can have concerns with supply or equipment issues. So really, the earlier in the year you go, number one, you're going to have more vendors looking to bid, and more people bidding on something in an open market reduces your costs. So we believe that by going early in the year, we are likely in the long run saving the district and the community money, because we are at the most aggressive or most competitive time of year for bidding. We're also putting ourselves at the top of the list for equipment and supplies, where once we award the bids and we go to contract, now they go out and they start working to secure those materials.
Thank you.
There's one additional benefit that I'd like to add as well, and that has to do with the debt service aid and the timing of the debt service aid, as we were talking about. The state, because the state is on the same fiscal year as school districts, a 6/30 fiscal year. They're working on their budget as they get towards the end of the calendar year, just December, and they're trying to get their budgets finalized around the same time that school districts are. And so because they need to know what to budget, what to put in their budget for for debt service aid for all the school districts in New Jersey each year, they've kind of set like a deadline, if you will, for when bonds have to be issued. And the last several years, it's been around the end of December, in which they can apply debt service aid to the following fiscal year. So you wouldn't lose, if the bonds weren't sold by the end of December, you wouldn't lose the debt service aid, but it would be delayed a year. So it might mess up the debt service, the tax impact for a year or so, which is something we want to avoid. So essentially, going a little bit earlier in the year, September, October, as we were targeting here, assures the district they will be able to sell and lock in the rates on the bonds, be able to give that debt service schedule to the state, and assure that we will get the debt service aid in the coming 23-24 school year, and we won't be delayed a year.
Thank you.
And Sherry, also, the earlier that we're able to sell the bonds, the more beneficial with the economy the way it's looking right now, correct?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we're definitely seeing an increase in interest rates. Federal Reserve, as everyone probably heard, increased rates 75 basis points today. It's the short term, so the short term rate, the overnight borrowing rate for the banks. So it doesn't have a direct impact on our long term rates. But rates are headed upward, and they have been. They've been moving upward all year. We've been conservative in the interest rate projections for the bond issue, and we're still below the numbers that we've been projecting. But it certainly does seem that the rates are trending higher. So the earlier we lock in, the better it would seem.
Thank you.
Great. The next question I'm going to direct to you, Mr. Grassi. Will the public be able to view invoices or other documents to see actually how and where the money was spent?
Absolutely. Through the Open Public Records Act, citizens can ask for any documents for this project or for anything else for that matter. This project will be audited by auditors. We get an annual audit, so that will be part of the audit, will be the Capital Projects Fund, which this will run through. But yes, on our website, you can find our Oprah form. If you want to fill out something to find any information, we're more than glad to go over it with you.
Thank you. The next one is what's in this for residents who do not have children in the district? So maybe you and I can take this on, Mr. Reyna. I know that I've talked to some people that don't have children in the district myself, and luckily most of them remember. I know what I heard when I was younger. When my kids went to school, someone else paid for the schools and paid for everything, and my kids benefited from it. So that's just kind of ingrained in me. But quite a few people have said to me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but they said that they were glad that we were getting back not just money that our district sent to the state, but we all often hear in the news or in the paper about New Jersey sending money to all these different parts of the state, and we kind of miss out on it. And so some people were thinking this is our chance to get a piece of that pie or get money from the state back in South Jersey, back in our communities.
Absolutely. I think that's an important component. And, I kind of mentioned that earlier, and a couple other people have referenced the idea, this debt service state aid. The state of New Jersey is going to identify who gets this money, where it goes. This is our opportunity to capitalize on that. So not only, again, it just further lessens what we locally are actually paying for this, because that state aid is coming in from taxpayers across the entire state. I think the other thing, and Mr. Fortas mentioned this earlier, from Atlantic City and Pleasantville and Egg Harbor Township all the way out to Bridgeton, that's the span of the Cape Atlantic League. That's the span of athletically where we play. We are now in the minority in not having any turf facilities, in the Cape Atlantic League, which covers 3 counties worth of high schools. And, we need to realize that when parents of 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds are looking at communities to move into, one of the first things they do is they look at schools. And when they look at schools, they look at performing arts and they look at athletics. And, the band can win championships, and, Cedar Creek football can win championships, and Oak Crest soccer can win championships, and Apsagami wrestling. But a part of winning that championship is also when you walk into the gym or when you walk out into the stadium, what does it look like and what's the feeling you get? And we have to understand that the attractiveness of what we are putting forth in the community, helps make our community more attractive to people looking to move.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking too, and I've seen this at some of the different times when I've been to the inside things, whether it's wrestling or basketball games. When I've been to Apsagami or Oak Crest, and I know somebody mentioned this before, but even if you don't have children in the district, but you go watch a game there, or you have family that goes and watches the game, it's just a safety thing too, and for mobility for people that have a hard time. Those bleachers, they're so old that you worry about people going up and down, and some people may not be able to climb those. And I think that and the outside things we're doing to make everything more accessible for anybody with any kind of disability or people that have difficulty getting around helps everybody. And I think that that comes back to, people want to be able to go to these events and be able to get in the buildings or get out to the fields where things are being held and be able to enjoy them and not, worry about getting in and out. So I don't know. I just keep thinking of all the different things that what would happen if we can do these improvements. I think that's all the questions I have for right now. So we can't let the virtual town hall end without what might be the most important information for everyone, and that's how you vote for it. Voting is very convenient, and that's available for this bond referendum because you can vote by mail. Taking note that the application form has to go to the county office, and also that mail-in ballots cannot be brought to the polling place. The website has all kinds of voter information listed on it. You might not vote at the site you usually go to. That's because the special election has special polling places and the county determines those. The website has a very handy chart to show you where to go. There's even a link on the website that you can enter your address and find out which site is your assigned polling place. So you might want to definitely check it out before you go to vote. Mr. Reyna, before we end this virtual town hall, do you have any final words for the people of Greater Egg District?
Thank you. Well, first off, thank you to everybody on the panel who committed their time tonight. And I think that's where I actually want to start for the community. The board started this conversation roughly 3 or 4 years ago, just before we were coming into COVID. So the architects and the bond counsel and our financial advisors and the previous superintendent and the board and myself and Mr. Grassi and the principals, over the last couple of years, we realized with the uncertainty that COVID was providing, it was not the right time to look at something like this. But as we came out of COVID and Mr. Grassi and myself and Mrs. Houck as board president really started to look at the specifics, and it was okay, we're paying off the previous referendum from the Apsagami expansion, and bond rates are still lower than they have been on previous referendums. And the fact that, roughly 7 months ago or 6 months ago, we found out there was going to be this massive increase in state aid. We went from roughly 2.1 to $2.4 million of state aid to 8.9. I mean, that's 4 times as much state aid as we were anticipating. The fact that right now we are utilizing federal grant money that has come to us right now, this past summer, now, next summer, we're completing almost $6 million in HVAC upgrades at no cost to the local taxpayer because we're utilizing our federal dollars. So we really have spent the last 6 to 12 months looking at different things here. The old debt paying off. We can use our federal dollars for HVAC so we don't have to burden the taxpayer. The idea that state aid is at this debt service state aid is paying for things they don't pay for. This all funnels into really a unique opportunity to maximize this timing. And as was mentioned, I mean, I appreciate what Sherry said. We're looking at I think it's on average a $3 to $5 decrease per year, even with the passing of this referendum. And the fact that somebody taking the time to go out and say no to this is only going to ultimately be worth $16 to $20 a year in comparison to what the communities can reap from this in terms of benefit. We really think it's a unique timing. And when we look at what other communities that have passed referendums recently, they didn't get state aid for track. They didn't get state aid for tennis courts. They didn't get state aid for the work underneath the turf stadiums. So we hope the communities realize our commitment, our vision to bring the high school back to being the central hub of the community. And a lot of what we're doing here, from the PAC to the increased mobility around the campus and better parking, more efficient lighting, more efficient doors and glass, that's long-term savings. 10 years from now, we're paying less for electric. 10 years from now, we're paying less for heat because of the work we want to do now. So, we just really hope on October 6th, people realize the amount of time and the amount of effort that's come into this and how everything is kind of coming together in this perfect scenario to maximize what we can offer the community.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Reyna, and thank you to all the panelists. With that, I'll end the virtual town hall. The recording is going to be available on the referendum website in the next day or two. And if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, you can still do that by email. The email address is vote@gehrhsb.net, and that'll be available from now through the vote, which is October 6th. Please remember to vote by mail or in person that Thursday. Thank you and good night.